Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the glamorous, scandalous, and utterly unpredictable world of Los Angeles fashion and family drama. Today is a beautiful day to unpack the latest explosive twists that are shaking the very foundation of our favorite dynasty. Let us get right into the heart of the action. The Forrester Creations CEO office has long been a sanctuary of power, a room where billion-dollar decisions are made, and where the most devastating family secrets are either buried or brought to the light. The sleek, modern walls of this executive suite have absorbed decades of betrayal, tears, and triumphant victories, but nothing could have prepared the Forrester and Logan families for the ticking time bomb that was left carelessly behind on a pristine glass desk. The atmosphere in the building has been suffocatingly tense ever since the chaotic events in Monaco, but the true epicenter of the impending earthquake was not a boardroom negotiation or a runway disaster. It was a simple, digital recording device, left in a moment of overwhelming, suffocating guilt by a man who could no longer carry the weight of his own sins. Carter Walton, the loyal chief operating officer who had always prided himself on his impeccable moral compass, had finally cracked under the immense pressure of his drunken, passionate encounter with Steffy Forrester Finnegan. Brooke Logan Forrester stepped into the quiet, empty CEO office, her mind swirling with the endless, exhausting conflicts that had defined her relationship with her stepdaughter. For years, Brooke had endured Steffy's high-and-mighty attitude, her relentless judgment, and her constant, hypocritical moral superiority. Steffy had always positioned herself as the unwavering protector of the Forrester legacy, frequently looking down upon the Logans and taking every available opportunity to criticize Brooke and her daughter, Hope Logan. Brooke's maternal instincts had been in overdrive as she watched Steffy ruthlessly tear down Hope, judging her choices and demanding absolute perfection, while simultaneously wielding her co-CEO power like a weapon. As Brooke walked past the executive desk, her eyes caught the soft, pulsing glow of a tablet screen. It was an audio recording application, paused mid-playback, driven by a mixture of idle curiosity and a lingering suspicion that the executives were hiding something regarding the company's recent financial shifts. Brooke tapped the screen. What echoed through the silent office was not a dictation of quarterly earnings or a strategy for the upcoming youth line. It was the agonizing, guilt-ridden voice of Carter Walton. The audio was raw, emotional, and devastatingly specific. Brooke stood frozen, the breath catching in her throat, as she listened to Carter confess the darkest secret currently hidden within the Forrester walls. His voice trembled as he detailed the events of that fateful night. The heavy drinking, the shared heartbreak over their respective marriages, the shedding of their clothes, and the undeniable, sizzling encounter that took place right there on the office couch. Carter's recorded confession outlined his desperate pact with Steffy to bury the truth, to lie to Ridge, to deceive Daphne, and most importantly, to keep John Finn Finnegan completely in the dark. Every single agonizing detail of Steffy's ultimate betrayal was captured in crystal-clear digital audio, a permanent testament to her staggering hypocrisy. A profound, intoxicating wave of realization washed over Brooke as the recording came to an end. The sheer magnitude of what she had just stumbled upon was world-altering. For decades, Brooke had been branded the scandalous woman, the slut from the valley, by Stephanie Forrester, a title that Steffy had eagerly inherited and weaponized against both Brooke and Hope. Steffy had built an entire persona around loyalty, commitment, and family values, using that pedestal to look down on the Logans. And yet, here was undeniable proof that the pristine Forrester princess had committed the ultimate marital treason, sleeping with her husband's friend and colleague in the very office where she commanded her empire. Brooke's initial shock rapidly morphed into a cold, triumphant vindication. This was not just a secret. This was the ultimate weapon, a divine instrument of justice handed directly to her to avenge every insult, every condescending glare, and every tear her daughter Hope had shed because of Steffy's cruelty. Brooke knew with absolute certainty that she could not simply confront Steffy with this information. A private confrontation would allow Steffy to spin the narrative, to make excuses, or to somehow manipulate Ridge into protecting her. No, the destruction of Steffi's moral high ground needed to be absolute, and the collateral damage had to be placed squarely at Steffi's own feet. Brooke's mind worked with surgical precision as she formulated her master plan. The person who needed to hear this recording was not Ridge, but the man whose heart was currently being held hostage by Steffi's lies. Brooke picked up her phone and dialed John Finn Finnegan. When the dedicated doctor answered, Brooke modulated her voice perfectly, infusing it with a tone of deep, maternal concern and gentle urgency. She told Finn that she was at the Forrester office and that she needed to see him immediately, claiming she wanted to offer him some comfort regarding the recent stress he had been under with the Sheila Carter situation and the lingering tension from Monaco. Finn, ever the compassionate and devoted husband, did not hesitate. He had spent the last several weeks twisting himself into knots, desperately trying to prove his unwavering loyalty to Steffi. He had drawn a hard line with his biological mother, Sheila, cutting her out of his life completely to honor his vows and protect his wife. He had flown back from Monaco carrying the heavy burden of Steffi's anger, believing that he was the sole cause of their marital strife. When Finn arrived at the CEO office, his demeanor was open, vulnerable, and completely oblivious to the execution that awaited him. He greeted Brooke with a weary but genuine smile, thanking her for checking in on him. Brooke played her part flawlessly. She guided Finn to a chair, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder, and spoke softly about the sanctity of marriage, the heavy burdens he had carried, and the immense sacrifices he had made for the Forrester family. She was softening him up, wrapping him in a false sense of security before dropping the guillotine. Finn, you have given so much of yourself to Steffi. You have sacrificed your own peace, your own safety, and you have constantly fought for your family. Brooke murmured, her eyes locked onto his with a look of profound, manufactured pity. You deserve the truth. You deserve to know exactly who you are fighting for, because I cannot stand by and watch you be deceived by the woman you worship. Finn's brow furrowed in deep confusion, a flicker of anxiety sparking in his dark eyes. He asked Brooke what she was talking about, his voice tinged with the sudden, terrifying realization that something was horribly wrong. Brooke did not answer with words. Instead, she turned to the desk, picked up the tablet, and pressed play. The pristine acoustics of the executive office amplified Carter Walton's recorded voice, filling the room with the undeniable, devastating confession. Finn sat paralyzed as the audio played. He heard Carter's agonizing guilt, the explicit mention of Steffi's name, the description of the alcohol-fueled passion, and the desperate pact to keep the infidelity buried forever. The physical manifestation of Finn's heartbreak was visceral and immediate. The color completely drained from his face, leaving him ashen and hollow. His broad shoulders, which had carried the weight of Steffi's demands and Sheila's madness, slumped forward as if the gravity in the room had suddenly multiplied. He stopped breathing, his chest frozen in a state of absolute, traumatizing shock. The words echoed in his mind, bouncing violently against the vows he had just renewed in his heart. He had promised Steffi that nothing would ever come between them, and all the while she had been carrying the scent of another man, a man he trusted, a man who worked just down the hall. The timing of what happened next was so tragically perfect it felt orchestrated by fate itself. The heavy oak doors of the CEO office swung open, and Steffi Forrester Finnegan walked in. She was dressed impeccably, holding a stack of design portfolios, expecting nothing more than a standard afternoon of corporate maneuvering. But as she stepped over the threshold, the residual echoes of Carter's recorded voice seemed to hang in the chilled air. Steffi froze, her eyes darting from the tablet in Brooke's hand to the utterly shattered, broken posture of her husband. The immediate, horrifying realization that her darkest, most shameful secret had been unearthed hit Steffi with the force of a freight train. The portfolios slipped from her trembling hands, scattering across the expensive rug in a chaotic mess that perfectly mirrored the sudden destruction of her carefully curated life. Finn slowly lifted his head, and the visual lock between husband and wife was a moment of profound, agonizing devastation. Finn stared at Steffi, his eyes wide with a bong hong, a deeply shocked, traumatized disbelief that slowly morphed into an expression of absolute, unadulterated disgust. This was the woman he had taken a bullet for in a filthy alleyway. This was the woman he had defied his own mother for, the woman he had worshipped as the infallible matriarch of their family. And she was standing before him as a complete stranger, a hypocrite who had defiled their marriage in the very room where they now stood. Steffi's mouth opened and closed, a desperate, pathetic attempt to form words, to offer an explanation, to spin the narrative as she always did. But there was no spin for this. The audio was undeniable. The betrayal was absolute. Brooke, standing perfectly still, decided it was time to twist the knife. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her calm, measured tone was far more devastating than any scream could ever be. "It is truly remarkable, Steffi," Brooke began, her voice dripping with a lethal, quiet triumph. "You stood on your pedestal for years. You judged hope. You judged me. You demanded absolute perfection and unwavering loyalty from everyone around you. And yet, the moment things got difficult in Monaco, the moment Finn made a mistake regarding Sheila, you ran back here and threw yourself into Carter's bed." Brooke stepped closer, making sure her words pierced through Steffi's rising panic. "Think about what this man has done for you. Finn took a bullet to the chest to save your life. He has endured the constant, suffocating demands of your family. He just cut his own biological mother out of his life completely just to make you feel secure. And how did you repay his endless sacrifices? By sleeping with your COO and lying straight to your husband's face." Brooke's words were perfectly calculated, adding volatile fuel to the raging fire of Finn's heartbreak. By highlighting the sheer magnitude of Finn's sacrifices, Brooke made Steffi's betrayal seem not just hurtful, but entirely unforgivable. Steffi's internal collapse was absolute. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup, as she took a desperate, trembling step toward her husband. "Finn, please. It was the alcohol I was grieving. I thought our marriage was over because of Sheila," Steffi pleaded, her voice cracking into a pathetic sob. But the mention of Sheila only deepened the wound. Finn stood up, his towering frame shaking with a mixture of grief and a newly ignited, terrifying rage. The hypocrisy of her excuse was staggering. She had ripped her wedding ring off in Monaco because he had simply shared a flight with Sheila, yet she felt justified in committing physical adultery because she was upset. "Don't," Finn whispered, his voice hoarse and completely stripped of the warmth and devotion that Steffi had taken for granted for so long. "Do not dare use the sacrifices I made, or the trauma we endured, to justify you sleeping with Carter." Finn looked around the CEO office, his eyes scanning the couch, the desk, the very environment where his wife had surrendered to another man. The psychological breakdown was evident in his eyes as he connected the dots. The missing wedding ring, the secretive, frantic arguments he had noticed between Steffi and Carter, the strange tension Ridge had been questioning. The foundation of his entire existence was crumbling into dust. Every kiss they had shared since she returned from Monaco now felt like a toxic, sickening lie. Brooke watched the scene unfold with a silent, profound victory settling deep within her chest. She had struck a massive, irreparable blow against the woman who had tormented her daughter. The power dynamic within the Forrester family had shifted permanently in the span of 10 minutes. Steffi Forrester, the self-righteous queen of the fashion empire, had fallen from her grace, her crown shattered on the floor alongside her portfolios. Brooke knew that Steffi would never again be able to look down on hope, never again be able to claim the moral high ground, and never again be able to weaponize loyalty. The vengeance Brooke had sought for her family was complete, delivered not through a boardroom coup, but through the exposure of Steffi's own undeniable sins. The aftermath in the room was a suffocating, heavy silence, broken only by Steffi's hyperventilating sobs. Finn did not yell. He did not throw things. His reaction was far more terrifying. It was the chilling, absolute withdrawal of his love. He looked at Steffi one last time, his bong-hong stare cementing the reality that the woman he worshipped was dead to him. Without another word, Finn turned his back on his weeping wife and walked out of the CEO office, leaving Steffi to drown in the wreckage of her own making, while Brooke Logan stood victorious amidst the ruins of the Shin marriage.